How's it going, my RWBY friends? Welcome to a discussion video. Today is Sunday, at least for me, and that's a pretty dang good day to discuss Mercury and Emerald and their possible redemption. Now, why is that? Well, there's no reason really. It just seems like kind of a good topic to discuss because I've talked about this before, but mainly around Volume 4. I haven't really talked about Merc and M that much in Volume 5 because they weren't really on screen much in Volume 5. Not that they were in Volume 4 either, but Volume 4 is closer to Volume 3, and in Volume 3, of course, there was a lot of Mercury and Emerald, so there was, just timing and whatnot. But my opinions have changed slightly. I always said that Mercury would have a better shot at redemption than Emerald would. And I still agree with that, except now it's even more likely that Merc will get redemption over Emerald, and less likely that M will get redeemed. Now, I can explain why. Let's start with Mercury, though. Let's talk about why I think he deserves redemption, and, well, maybe not deserves, but more so it's likely for him, more likely than Emerald. And then after I talk about that, I'll talk about why Emerald probably won't get the redemption. Now, that said, both of them are it's still very likely that either of them will get redemption. I'm just explaining why Merc has a higher probability than Emerald does. So, going back to Merc, let's take a look at his background. Everything we know about his history. We know that he was raised by Marcus Black, who was a very famous assassin and an alcoholic and probably a pretty bad father. It's very heavily implied. It's basically confirmed, you could say even, that he abused Mercury physically and emotionally, verbally as well. So, that's not so good. He had a very tough upbringing, given that he was raised by Marcus Black, and eventually it led to a fight between the two of them where Mercury actually X'd off Marcus, and right after that, Cinder and Emerald rolled up on Mercury and recruited him. Now, at that time, Mercury's legs were completely busted. They were bandaged up, bleeding. He could barely walk. He was hobbling away from the burning house. The house was burning, so he couldn't take shelter there. That was obviously causing a lot of negative emotions, his father before he passed away, and Mercury, which would attract Grimm, plus the fire, plus the noise, the negativity, all that jazz. It wasn't looking good for Mercury to survive that situation, even though he won the fight. Now, we don't know exactly where the cabin was, but we could tell that it was surrounded by woods, and it was a very secluded area. Now, how close was it to the nearest, village or town or main city? We don't really know. But I think it's still reasonable to assume that there's a high chance that Mercury would not have survived, even if Cinder and Emerald didn't roll up. I don't think Mercury would have survived walking in that state all the way to the next shelter. And those people might not have even helped him if they knew he was like Marcus's son. We don't really know exactly how that would have went down, but it didn't look good for Mercury. That's the bottom line. And Cinder roll up and basically force him into working with Cinder. If he would have said no, I have no doubt in my mind that Cinder would have just finished him off there. I mean, Marcus was already gone at that point. The only loose end left is Merc, and she probably would have just put him down. Why even risk letting him live and know who, Cinder and Emerald are and, all this stuff. Now, she didn't, tell him about Salem yet and all that, but still, there's no reason to really let him live. So, basically, Mercury was forced into working with Cinder, Emerald, Salem, and all that. Now, it kind of fits his character to be working with the villains, but not entirely, because Merc wasn't really a bad guy. He had a very tough upbringing. He was raised as an assassin. He could have been a very neutral character. I'm not saying he would be like a huntsman, but I don't think he'd be a full-on villain, working with Salem. I think he maybe would have been more of a villain than a hero, but not working on, Salem level type of villain. So that alone kind of sets off some red flags about a possible redemption arc for Mercury, the fact that he was forced into joining them and it wasn't out of his own, free will. Now, factor in the scenes in Volume 4 where we see Mercury continually looking more and more out of place. He's just very quiet. His arms are crossed. You can tell by his body language that he's not really enjoying working with Salem. You can tell from the very first scene of Volume 4 when Merc and M are watching the Grimmspawn that Mercury is just disgusted. And then, like I said, as we go on and on and on in Volume 4, we see more and more situations where Merc just seems out of place. He doesn't like working for these people. And again, they're so evil, they could remind him of his father, which he certainly wouldn't like. I mean, you saw what he did to his father. So if they're making him think of his father, then that's pretty done deal there, I think. Aside from the fact that if he leaves, he might get X'd off himself because he's pretty in deep at this point. Once you're in deep with these kind of people, you usually don't leave unless you're, either in jail or gone. So there's that. Now in Volume 5, though, we just talked about Volume 4 Merc. Let's talk about Volume 5 Merc. Volume 5 Merc is going back to the personality he had in Volume 3, which is a very weird situation because we have character regression in Cinder and Mercury, really. Cinder and Merc, Volume 4 acted a lot differently than they had in Volume 1, 2, and 3. But then in Volume 5, it's they're back to their old personalities. Now, I don't want to rant about Cinder. This is about Mercury and Emerald, but we can talk about Merc in the same regards because Mercury was back to he was looking like he was fitting in, with doing these things that he was forced to do by Salem. Now, maybe that's because he just didn't like being the Salem's base. We can actually make a pretty reasonable assumption on that. Like, Merc seemed out of place, but every time we saw him looking like that, it was at Salem's base, her pocket dimension, or whatever the heck it is. Maybe being back in the regular landscape put him in a more comfortable environment, even though he was working with Cinder, Watts, and Emerald. And of course, Watts was the only outlier there. We know that Merc does get along pretty well with Emerald and Cinder. And I say pretty well, not very well, because there have been little situations where M kind of pushed Merc aside so that she could be the one closer to Cinder. So you have this weird triangle going on with Emerald being infatuated with Cinder kind of just using both of them, and Mercury kind of just being thrown in the mix. And it's a weird situation all around. So there's all that. Now let's talk about Emerald. Well, let's see. Did I really leave off on Merc? I should probably finish off saying why I think he might get redemption. Basically, in summary of everything I just said, he seems like he's out of place. He seems like he was forced to join them to begin with. He seems like a character that might be like chaotic, evil, or something like that, but doesn't really seem like the kind of person to be working with Salem, like that full-on evil. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would want to like bring down Ozpin's system and change the world. He just seems like he wants to just do what is right for himself and not put himself in any sort of cause. For all those reasons, I could see Mercury getting some redemption. Now, just to clarify, by redemption, I don't mean he like suddenly becomes a good character. I just mean he stops working with Salem, and maybe he does something pivotal. Maybe if Salem gets a relic, he ends up taking it from her and tries to do his own thing. But that said, that role was kind of given to Raven more recently. That was something I could have seen Mercury doing in Volume 4. Before Volume 5 came out, I was kind of thinking he might do something like that. As of Volume 5, like I said, things have changed a bit. Mercury's character has changed a bit, regressed a bit. Raven's kind of filled a role when it comes to taking a relic and flipping things around, so we'll see how that all plays out. But let me talk about Emerald now and why I don't think she will get redemption. Emerald, I mean, before I even get into that, though, let's talk about, does she even deserve redemption, really? And it's not really fair to compare her to Mercury entirely because we don't know enough about Emerald's backstory. All that we know is that she seems like she had no family, no friends. She was just doing her own thing, being a pickpocket. Now, that said, Emerald is very skilled. She's got a very overpowered semblance, and she also... Okay, good. I just want to be sure that my audio was recording. Sometimes I get really nervous thinking I didn't click start, but I did. Okay. Emerald has skills, she has talent, she's got an OP semblance. She easily could have become a huntress. She didn't need to be a pickpocket. She could become a huntress, take on missions. She would be a very good huntress. Like I said, she's got an OP semblance, she's skilled, she knows how to fight well and take care of herself. There's no reason why she wouldn't have been a good huntress. There's no reason for her to be forced to be a pickpocket. That's why I don't understand why she says Cinder, like she owes Cinder everything. Why? Because Cinder, like, kind of flirted with you a little bit. Like, you're infatuated with her and you just, like... How do you owe Cinder everything? You had plenty of paths in life. It's not like Emerald was like some weak, like no aura, no semblance, doesn't know how to fight, pickpocket girl. That wasn't the case. She knew how to fight. She had her weapons. She had her semblance when Cinder found her. Like I said, there were other paths that Emerald could have taken. Now, we can assume that, again, Emerald has no friends and family. So maybe Cinder came in and kind of filled a hole in M's persona, a hole that longed to have somebody caring for her. But Cinder doesn't really seem like the caring type. She really doesn't. So I don't really understand how Emerald assumes all this stuff about Cinder loving her when we haven't really seen that to be the case. We have seen, like, I definitely think Emerald is infatuated with Cinder, but I don't really think Cinder loves Emerald back at all. If anything, she's just a tool for Cinder. I mean, that's basically what Emerald and Mercury have been. She even refers to them as, like, her disciples. Like, it's just weird, okay? So I don't think it's justified for Emerald to really have redemption over Mercury. I think Mercury's backstory is more fleshed out. I think it's more dramatic, and I think it would make for a more interesting redemption arc. Now, I'm not, saying both of them can't get redeemed. And again, I use the term redeemed very loosely. I'm not saying they'll, like, become good characters. I'm just saying they will stop working with Salem and Team Switch and all that stuff. A lot of people think that Emerald will get redemption now because of the fact that Cinder could be gone or Cinder lost the fight. But here's why I'm going to tell you that's not the case. Because if we look at Salem's history, who does Salem go after? Let's take a look. Watts, failed scientist, failed at Legion... doctor. He didn't, failed. That's the key word. Salem recruited a failure, basically. Hazel fell into depression, anger, all alone. His sister got X'd off due to Ozpin. Not really, though. It's debatable. But we're not going to go into that whole rabbit hole. Point is, Hazel was in a very depressed state, needed somebody to pull him out. Salem was there. Cinder, we don't know enough about her backstory, but there's a lot of assumptions on her being like an outcast noble or some royalty or something like that. Basically, again, Salem comes and recruits this person from their time of need. Tyrion is a completely deranged lunatic who worships Salem. So again, it's reasonable to assume that Salem came and pulled Tyrion out of his time of need. Salem comes to people as the fairy godmother, but also kind of like, you know, a Oni type of character. Like, she's got some bad stuff going on, obviously. But she goes to people in their time of need. Emerald has now faced her greatest time of need. We have never seen Emerald lose it as much as we have when she realized that Cinder failed the mission and Cinder could possibly be X'd off and gone. This is Emerald's time of need. This is the perfect opportunity for Salem to make Emerald loyal to her and not loyal to Cinder. This is the time for Salem to swoop in and take Emerald under her wing and offer her a way out. Obviously, that's a contract signed in blood, as we know how Salem works. It's not so simple like, I'm going to make everything better for you. It's like, I'll make it better for you, but you're going to devote your soul and your life to me from that point on. So this is definitely the chance for Salem to go and get Emerald to turn her loyalty to her, not going through Cinder. Get rid of the Cinder middleman and make Emerald loyal to you. Meanwhile, Mercury, if that does happen, will be further out of place. And for all the reasons I already talked about, then Mercury could start deviating more and more and more from Team Switch. So all in all, I do think it's possible for either character to get redemption, but for those reasons stated, I think it's much more likely that Mercury gets redeemed over Emerald if either of them do, and if one of them has to be picked. So we'll see how that all plays out. I think it's pretty set. It's set up pretty well for Salem to swoop in and get Emerald under her wing and all that jazz I already talked about. But we'll see how it plays out. We have about 5 months or so until Volume 6. Volume 6 probably comes around the middle or latter part of October. So what is it, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, right about 5-6 months. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'll have plenty more content coming before then. So remember to... okay, I totally just got tongue tied there. So remember to subscribe. If you're not, hit the thumbs up button. That definitely helps out. And turn notifications on so you can be aware of when a new video comes out. And also when I go live. I do a lot of live streams. And a lot of you guys don't get notified when those even happen. Like, you guys don't even know that they're happening. So definitely turn on the notification bell if you want to be a part of those live streams. Sometimes I take viewer calls. Sometimes we just go over RWBY stuff. Sometimes RL, Fortnite, whatever. It's always a good time, though. So if I catch you guys there, it'd be awesome. If you do all those things, I'll definitely see you next time.